Oh boy, where do I start with this? Hereditary is a very personal statement on the relationship between parents and their children, executed as a family drama about grief and loss, disguised as a satanic horror film featuring metaphors for mental illness with elements of very dark humour and observations on choice and the impact of decisions. Alright, that's it. We're done. But in all seriousness, the film shines as an example of what a talented filmmaker with a specific vision can achieve on a limited budget. It rewards you for paying attention. Budget of Hereditary, $10 million, not including marketing costs. And just look at that opening shot, or the entire central location of the film. That house that a big chunk of the film takes place in, they built that entire thing as an interior set because director Ari Aster needed the specifics of the house to be exact. What did Wish Upon achieve with a budget of $2 million more than Hereditary? But I'm not here to talk about how Hereditary is way better than most modern horror films, or how studios destroy films by deciding they want to revise the entire film in post-production. I was going to do that, but there's too much to say about Hereditary on its own. So I want to talk about foreshadowing. Ari Aster was so specific with his vision for the film that there's a scene in the script where Peter is at high school and every word written on the blackboard is in the script itself. This scene is in the movie, although it's unfortunately cut down to its core purpose, which is to introduce Peter's romantic interest and emphasize his distraction at school. You can't even read what's on the whiteboard in the film because it's partially obscured, yet Aster insists on including it. Why? Because it foreshadows the entire plot. Escaping fate is the summoning of the King Payman, the relationship between knowledge and responsibility. That's an easy one. But do yourself a favour and go read the full script online. It's full of great examples of show, don't tell, and how visual ideas can be imagined in text. Anyway, hand in hand with his use of foreshadowing is Aster's use of setup and payoff. We all know what this is. The writer briefly introduces an element, be it through visuals or a line of dialogue,
there are nuts in that either,
which is then paid off in some way later. Basically a reward for paying attention. Hereditary is packed with these, and my favourite is one that I didn't even notice the first time I watched the film. Towards the end, Peter hears a loud crash in the house and we're treated to a brief shot with a broken piano in the foreground. Now this is the only time we see this, and barely any attention is called to it except for Peter giving it a brief glance before much crazier shit happens. Then in the attic, everything comes to a head when Peter looks up to find Annie beheading herself using piano wire. Ah boy, what a film. And Aster knew that the average audience member wouldn't notice this stuff, but he didn't compromise his vision for some lazy flashbacks later in the film that explain everything that happened earlier in the film. In fact, he literally wrote in the script that these details are for people paying crazy attention.
Just an average telephone pole, but we hold on it for a second longer than feels necessary. Hyper-attentive viewers might notice that a small sigil has been carved into it.
Also, this is just a thought, but I love that Annie's resentment of Peter is set up in this scene when we're introduced to Joan. She doesn't just say her daughter died, she says,
my daughter was killed. Oh.
Now, let's talk about editing. Not so much the momentary editing from shot to shot, although there are some great match cuts in Hereditary, and that creepy scene transition, damn. But what I mean is the structural editing. After reading the script and comparing it to the film, you can start to appreciate which moments are rearranged or cut altogether.
I drove you here, so if you don't go in with me, I'm gonna have to drive you home.
The seance scene and the sleepwalking nightmare are in that order in the script, yet in the film they're swapped. Maybe to signify that Annie has forgiven Peter in some sense? The scene in the film where Peter has some kind of allergic reaction to weed at school is cut in straight after Peter has some PTSD hallucinations in class, and this cool little practical effect. But in this script, this classroom scene happens on page 41 and the weed scene is page 49, well after Joan is introduced and Annie decides to call her. By the way, I didn't notice this at first either, but the script draws attention to the fact that Annie doesn't actually touch this little bottle that she knocks over. I'm doing air quotes. Almost like something was drawing her to Joan. Anyway, I'd say Ari and the editors, Lucian Johnston, and Jennifer Lame decided to cut in a few of Peter's scenes back to back to accentuate how he deals with his grief after Charlie dies. Of course, there's always leeway to change the order of scenes when adapting a script, especially one that jumps from character to character as much as this one. But I'd say Aster could basically visualize every detail in the film during the script process. And the sleepwalking scene I mentioned is probably the best example. I mean, the sound design is noted in the script.
There is no audible room tone and the dialogue is strangely crisp as though being spoken in a dreamy vacuum. The only other sound is Max's distant barking.
And the use of cutting back and forth to introduce the fire is also written there.
We cut back to Peter, but his hair and face are now inexplicably drenched in liquid, presumably paint thinner.
Hell, even the lighting.
An off-screen fire ignites, illuminating Annie's face in hellish orange.
Now, I'm not saying telling every department how to do their job in the script is a good thing, but it's nice to see a horror filmmaker create something that feels like his vision. Something that stands on its own as a great film even without the horror elements. A film that rewards you for paying attention. And one that was critically and commercially successful. Now let's just hope Tony Collette gets that Oscar nomination.
Face on your face!
Alright, that's a review. Bye!